As you've been feeling, it is hot. The heat index could go up to 115 degrees today, and Cook County is under an excessive heat warning. We're also experiencing poor air quality. Now, in a moment, we'll hear about safety precautions for people who have to work outside in weather like this. But first, let's check in with Illinois State Climatologist Trent Ford. Hi, Trent. Welcome back.
Hey, Sasha.
First of all, a heat index, as I said, of 115 degrees. I mean, what factors come into play when meteorologists calculate the heat index?
Yeah, so the heat index is our sort of way of trying to represent the combined effect of heat and humidity. So we have heat, and everybody experiences what it feels like to be out in high temperatures, no matter how much humidity is in the air. Those can be dangerous. But what high humidity does is it makes it so that we're unable to cool ourselves as effectively because, the way our bodies cool ourselves is we sweat, that sweat evaporates, but that high humidity makes it less effective. And so we can get pretty dangerous conditions a lot quicker. So we combine that to the heat index.
Yeah, it's sweltering out there, Trent. How common is this type of weather in the Chicago area?
It's not super common to see these high temperatures and humidity values any time of the year, but especially this late in the year. I will say that, the focus is always on the eye-popping high temperature values. But in fact, what the last couple of days, especially last night, really brought is record-breaking low temperatures. So O'Hare only got down to 79 last night, Midway 80, and both of those are the highest nighttime temperatures we've ever seen this late in the year. And I say ever, that goes back to the 1870s.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Again, we focus on those eye-popping high temperatures, but in fact, when we talk about human health, it's really the health aspect is the cumulative exposure to hours of not just heat index values of 115, but just hours of heat index values over 85, over 90 degrees. And in fact, O'Hare had 13 hours above 90-degree heat index between 11 p.m. and midnight yesterday.
Right.
So, so the persistence of the heat, not just during the day, but at night, is what's really impressive
here. It's hot round the clock. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
So we're under an excessive heat warning. What is the difference again between a heat warning and a heat watch?
Yeah, heat watch is the same kind of thresholds, heat index 100, 105, 110, depending on how many days in a row that's going to be. A heat watch is if there's a potential for that in the forecast. So when we look out a few days, the National Weather Service says, hey, it's going to be kind of hot. There's the potential of reaching these thresholds. We're going to put out a heat watch, just like a tornado watch is the potential for tornadic activity, but not imminent. A heat warning is when those conditions are imminent. We expect there to be these kind of conditions. In this case, we've had 2 consecutive days where the heat index has gotten over 105, likely over 110, so therefore we're in a heat warning now.
And how long is this one projected to last?
So we'll see a cool down later tonight, tomorrow morning. In fact, tomorrow's forecasted high is only around 80 degrees for much of Chicago. And actually by Labor Day, it'll struggle to get above 70, which is going to feel amazing after this. So if folks can just hang on one more day, one more night, we can get some relief in here. And hopefully that relief will last at least, a number of days in the next week.
We're also seeing poor air quality, Trent. What are the details on that?
Yeah, this happens actually quite often. So ozone, which is really good up in the stratosphere where we want it because it blocks ultraviolet radiation, which can be really harmful for us. When it's down here where we're breathing the air at the surface, it can be really harmful for our respiratory health, and especially can exacerbate people who have asthma, COPD, things like that. And we see high ozone levels when we see these kind of heat conditions because it's high temperatures. Ozone is effectively created with pollution down here at the surface, but at the same time, these kind of conditions that breed this really extreme heat also don't let that ozone, what we call, mix through the atmosphere, so it just kind of stays trapped by the surface. So very often when we see these very high temperatures in Chicago, we see those high ozone levels too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a double whammy, especially on the most vulnerable folks with pre-existing health conditions.
Yeah, speaking of the most vulnerable folks, I mean, this weather, it's the most dangerous, right? Excessive heat. Now, talk about who it affects, Trent, and the warning signs that folks should look out for.
Yeah, so first and foremost, elderly and just across the board, elderly and those who are very young are affected just kind of broadly the most by extreme heat. Those are exacerbated by humidity and the poor air quality. But those with pre-existing health conditions, things like respiratory issues, cardiovascular issues, diabetes, I mentioned asthma, COPD, those kind of things. And again, heat, we focus on the heat-related deaths, but we can have many large impacts that don't necessarily lead to fatality. So things that people need to look out for: dizziness, headaches, shortness of breath, right? These are things that can reflect heat-induced stress that, if not taken seriously, can lead to much worse problems. So it's today, like I mentioned, we're getting a break tomorrow and in subsequent days. So today, if folks can just take a rest. I just saw I'm coaching 6-year-old soccer
Yeah.
this year, and our games are canceled tonight, as they should be. Practices for outdoor sports really should be canceled. Outdoor workers, farm workers, if you can take a day off, this is the day to take off. And I'm talking to supervisors just as much as the workers themselves. Just taking those breaks, precautions. If you have to be out there, watch for those symptoms, stay hydrated, and take breaks in the shade as much as possible.
Yeah. And before I let you go, Trent, I mean, just tie the knot for us here. The changing climate that we're seeing, how does that impact the frequency of excessive heat? And
Yeah, I just want
go
no, go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry. Well, I just want to make one important point here that, again, we focus so much on those high temperatures, but study after study shows it's the cumulative effect of very hot days and very warm nights that is really affecting human health. And when we look at climate change is disproportionately increasing those nighttime temperatures, those overnight temperatures, especially in our urban areas like Chicago. So when we think about our response to mitigate those impacts of extreme heat, things like opening cooling centers, opening shelters, running the CTA buses as mobile cooling centers, having those open at night is increasingly important because of those overnight temperatures increasing because of climate change. So it's not just that, we need to be expecting more heat, it's how we're responding to that heat and the difference between daytime and nighttime heat that's really important.
Trent Ford is Illinois State climatologist. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Sasha.